without process, people don't know what to follow. And if you lose one of those humans that have that tribal knowledge, you've lost your internal process.
Welcome to Revenue Insights. We're joined by revenue leaders from some of the highest growth companies. Together, we explore how they built their revenue teams, the journeys they've been on, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Revenue Insights is brought to you by Ebsta. We're an AI-first revenue intelligence platform designed to help you close more deals, retain more customers, and forecast better. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello, everybody. And on today's episode of the Revenue Insights podcast, I'm thrilled to have Shianne Sampson, the Global Vice President of Sales at Eventbrite, joining us. With over 18 years of experience in building high-performing sales organizations and leading revenue growth, Shianne has an impressive track record of turning underperforming teams into revenue-generating powerhouses. Her expertise in driving accountability, coaching talent, and leveraging data to transform sales teams has made her a recognized leader in the space. Today, she'll be sharing her journey and strategies for success, turning sales teams around and achieving long-term success. Shianne, welcome to the show.
Guy, thank you for having me.
So let's jump straight in. Shianne, you've had a diverse career across multiple companies and industries. Can you walk us through your career path to date and what initially sparked your interest in sales leadership?
Well, I've been in sales longer than I care to admit, so at a very young age, cold calling, but it had led me into the software world. So let's rewind back to 2009, San Francisco. I started at a little known company at the time, Yelp, and my career kind of grew from there. So I was in San Francisco working for Yelp. Nobody really knew who we were. And my 6-year journey there took me on an interesting curve. I went from salesperson to sales leader to sales enablement, which was a strange path for me, because I had been a sales manager before Yelp for 6 years. But it was a great journey at Yelp. And then I got recruited to Zenefits, if you're familiar with Zenefits. And then the journey since then has been company after company that needs their sales team turned around. So my last company right before where I'm at now was New Relic. I was able to go into New Relic, build an inside sales team from scratch, get that team turned around. And then end of the year, just at 137% before getting recruited to Eventbrite to do the same thing. So over my almost 2 decades of sales leadership experience now, I think where I found my strength is going in, setting sales teams, getting them turned around and performing. So that's my career.
Well, it sounds very exciting, and you've really found your niche. So when you first assess an underperforming sales team, what are the top signs or issues that you're looking for to identify the root cause of the problem?
So strangely enough, because I consult on the side too, so I've had the honor and privilege of being able to work with so many organizations that experience the same thing. So organizations will, it's a fairly similar pattern that they follow. They start off, they have a dream, they're growing from the inside. People love them. Everything's working great. And then they hit a revenue break, could be the 50 million mark, could be the 200 million mark. You never know when it happens, but when things start to slow down, so they hit that top of that bell curve and then they can't figure out how to fix it. And it's usually always the same stuff. They didn't put process in place because they grew too fast. They hired the wrong people. They promoted people from within and promoted them too quickly and then didn't support them. They don't have the tools in place, or they're using their tools incorrectly. There's no accountability measures, right? And they don't know how to manage pipeline. And it's typically always those things. And so when I come in, that's the assessment I do. I spend the first probably 30 days just asking questions. What are we doing? What's happened? And it almost always ends up being that same stack rank of issues. And then I just use a similar prescription to start knocking them out one by one. You start with process, you layer in accountability, you get rid of the wrong people, you put the right people in place, and then you really hone down your pipeline.
Well, you've answered my next question, which was all about where do you start? But it sounds like process is step one in that journey. Is that right?
Yeah, I want to say process because here's the thing. Most organizations do the we know how it's done around here, and they have a lot of tribal knowledge, a lot of people that have been in seats since day one, or those types of things. Even New Relic, such an amazing organization, billion-dollar company. When I first took on that team, there wasn't process in place because they had grown so fast. Again, they had a lot of tribal knowledge in place. And so without process, people don't know what to follow. And if you lose one of those humans that have that tribal knowledge, you've lost your internal process, right? So putting process in place and documenting everything. So I'm really big on written documentation, everything from expectations to this is how we do things. Now, that doesn't mean that it is stagnant after that. It's something you'll always have to revisit and make sure that you're ever evolving, but you do need it in place so that people have a prescription to follow.
That makes a lot of sense, and a good place to start. I know you're a big fan of being much more data-driven than most sales organizations that we come across, at least. So how do you incorporate data into turning around a sales team? And are there specific kind of North Star metrics that you find are particularly helpful at getting everybody aligned?
I love that question. That's going to be my favorite question, because I wasn't always data driven. So I think early sales days, because I had been in sales for so long, I was very instinct driven. And especially in my early sales career, I think you know this, and you've talked to so many people, Guy, but most of us were promoted because we were really great salespeople. And maybe we showed some sales leadership characteristics, right? But when you get into sales leadership, you really don't know what you're doing. You're trying to recreate your own success, but you don't always know how you even did that, right? So you go off of instincts. The problem with that is your instincts aren't always right. It may have worked for you, but your instincts aren't always right. And so I had to learn the hard way early in my sales management career that my instincts weren't always right and to lean on data. And it was really drilled into me at my last organization. My last boss, Manav Khurana, he's the chief product officer. I know, having a sales leader report into you, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. He just really pushed me. I had already been at that point a data human, but when you look through the eyes of data, the truth is much more apparent. And when I say data driven, I mean everything. I love ideas. I love feedback. When my team brings me feedback, when they tell me, hey, there's this thing we can do better, whatever it is. My pushback is always, that's a great hypothesis. Now show me the data. Everything from leads are down. Okay, show me the data. Or lead quality has diminished. All right, let's look at the data, right? And let me tell you, over half the time, the data does not back up the hypothesis that humans bring to you. And so when I say data, even for sales performance, I'll get sales managers, sales directors telling me a certain person on their team's not performing. Okay, let's look at the data. And now let's look at the data comparing to the rest of the team. And there's always an insight in there where they miss. Oh, yeah, they do have a higher conversion rate than everyone else. So it's not them, it's the leads that they're getting. Let's make sure they're getting the specific lead or what have you, right? And so I think if that's not your strength, for anybody listening, if data is not your strength, then surround yourself with someone it is their strength, and then always lean on the data to make your decisions. I'm not great at pulling it. I'm not an ops person, but I'm great at looking at it and making those decisions from there.
I think that's such a key point. We built our whole business model on the fact that we want to help people become a lot more data driven. And what's beautiful about salespeople is that even if they're underperforming, they're all driven to want to succeed. And so while they'll push back a lot when you're just giving them gut feel, if you show them pictures of how they can be better, if you can show them clarity around, look what our win rate looks like if you do X, Y, and Z or Z, you're much more likely to get them bought into that as a process. And we've seen that. And the impact you can have is substantial, because ultimately that drive to win means that if you can show them that if they follow the process the way that the top performers are doing things, that they're going to win more, so quickly they jump on top of that and they want to be part of that success story.
Ooh, that was beautiful what you just said, because you could take what you just said and that's how you convince your executive staff to give you more budget. That's how you convince a customer to buy. That's how you convince a vendor to work with you, whatever it is, through the data, through the visual, and through that picture of that partnership. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're a technology business, so we sell licenses. But last year we introduced a services wrapper because we had to find a way of getting the C-suite bought into the changes that they needed to make, so that everybody started to do things in the way that the top performers were doing it. And just by extracting the latest insights from our platform and serving it up to the leadership team in a digestible format, suddenly they were all on board. And these RevOps teams that were kind of preaching this stuff for years sometimes weren't really getting the traction with the leadership team. Suddenly, all of a sudden, it was the leadership team's idea. And now everybody was coming along on that journey because we were able to take what they knew was the right thing to do, but actually show them the evidence and make it and turn it into pictures and make it easy to digest.
Ooh, for all the salespeople that just listen to Guy say that, do that in your demos and presentations. Show the data. Don't just show the pretty slides, right? Show how it's going to impact their business, and that's how you win.
Very good. Very good. So I also know you're a huge fan of side-by-side coaching, and it's an area that you excel in. So how do you approach coaching with a sales professional that maybe been underperforming for a while, and how do you help them change that mindset and behavior?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a tough leader to work for. People either love me or they hate me, which makes sense. And the reason being is I'm highly, highly accountable, and I expect my people to be that as well. Well, if I'm going to expect that much of my people, they should get something in return outside of just that paycheck. And so I strongly believe, and it's from Nathan Jamil's book, The Leadership Playbook. If you've ever read or heard him, he says you should hire good people and they should expect for you to make them great. And I firmly believe in that. The boss that I was just talking about, my favorite leader that I've ever worked for, he was terrifying to work for. He pushed me, right? He pushed me, but I became better under his mentorship. And I think that that's what everyone should be able to say. So I strongly believe in coaching. You should, as a leader, get very good at your craft. And by the time you're a sales leader, I would say sales director, you should be, there's two crafts you have to be good at: sales and leadership. And so your managers should expect you to coach them and support them and make them better. And your salespeople should expect to be coached and be made better. And so if you haven't mastered your craft, if you're not constantly refreshing, reading books, podcasts, practicing, getting on calls yourself, listening to recordings, doing all of those things, then you're going to slip over the years. Your expertise, your ability is going to slip, and then your sales team is going to suffer as well. So you have to be good at what you do on both levels, and you have to make the people underneath you great as well.
I love that, and I'm a massive fan of coaching, and something I participate on both sides with on a regular basis. Can you share a specific example, though, of how a particular sales rep that you coached made a significant improvement in their performance? And was there a kind of a moment of clarity when there was a turning point in their journey?
I do still coach salespeople, but I do the initial coaching, and then the sales leaders see it through. I can give you an example of the types of coaching that I do, and then the aha moments. And so let's take, for example, the company I'm at right now, Eventbrite. It's very common for people to hire in industries like this passion players. And what I mean passion players are people that are really interested in the vertical or the industry or the product that you're selling. Eventbrite is a ticketing and solution platform, right? So music, festivals, community events, all these really cool things. People love that. We attract a lot of extroverts, a lot of social people that love the idea of connecting the world and making the world a better place through those connections, right? And I love that. It's a great product to sell. And it's a great culture. I mean, Julia Hartz, the CEO here, is just one of the most well-balanced CEOs that I've worked for. She balances culture and business very, very well. But they hire people that are passion players. They had hired people when I get here, and that's very common. That's another thing on the stack list of things that companies do is they hire people that just want to be at the organization. The problem with that is they weren't salespeople. And so one of the things I have to do when I come into an organization is one, I listen to almost everyone's sales calls right out of the gates just to assess talent. I'll give you an example. So one of our top salespeople, or known to be one of the best salespeople, when you listen to his calls, he is good. He knows the industry. He's very good at relating. And this type of industry, especially music, they don't care about what you know in terms of product. Know care about who you know and what you know in terms of music, right? And so he had that checklist done. The issue was he didn't know how to set up a call, control the call from the beginning, question in and get the prospects speaking, right, and telling us what it was going to take for them to buy. And he didn't know how to control the close. And so we were on with a $1 million customer, right, a huge customer. And the way that he proposed pricing at the end, I'm trying to say this diplomatically, but the way he proposed pricing at the end was very soft and was, hey, here it is, but we can go back to the table if this isn't where you want to be. And I had to pull him after that call and walk him through, that's not how we close a deal. So let's walk through it, right? He's still working on it because he does come from the industry. But, in the past, I want to say 3 or 4 months, he's closed several large deals, just shifting that kind of mindset and moving into a more sales type approach, right? Rather than just a passion player approach. But that's common. So when you look at salespeople, they've heard what they need to hear in the past, but it's like game film. So you mentioned Gong earlier, and I hate to give Gong a shout out on here, but Gong is just like the best thing that's ever happened to salespeople, right? But I teach my sales team that it's like the best athletes in the world watch their game film. And so watching your game film and tweaking even the tiniest things, you may be one of the top sellers. There's still something you can tweak to make an impact and make a difference, right? And so when you say a huge impact, it's every day. It's coaching every single day. It's looking at game film every single day. And it's those incremental gains that make you a superstar.
We'll return to the episode in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by Ebsta. We are the only revenue intelligence platform with 3 brand guarantees. We guarantee to improve seller performance in the first 6 months. We guarantee to increase forecast accuracy to plus or minus 10% inside 6 months, and we guarantee to get you live within 30 days so you can influence this quarter's number. For more information, visit ebsta.com. Now, back to Revenue Insights.
Oh, I definitely got into that. At the beginning of last year, we launched our own call intelligence as part of the bigger picture revenue intelligence. And then very quickly, it became apparent that why are we trying to compete with Gong on call recording, right? Because actually, the real value in what we do is all about the intelligence and the insights. And so we now plug into Gong recordings, and we're able to go back through the last year's worth of traffic just to really understand what's gone on. But what was fascinating, we did this for our first customers that were using Gong and Ebsta, we found that deals that were closing in stage 4 or 5 as lost. When you go back and review the qualifying calls, more often than not, they weren't actually in a sales process. They hadn't actually asked all the qualifying questions that would allow them to even leave stage 1 or 2 in the sales cycle. And so once you understand that we're not doing this in a consistent way, and then all of a sudden you can almost use the AI now to give you a green thumbs up or a red thumbs down at the end of a discovery call as to whether you've done enough to leave that discovery phase. And believe me, the seller only gets 1 or 2 red thumbs down before they change their approach, because they all want that green thumbs up so they can move on. So it's amazing how the AI and the technology that's out there can facilitate better outcomes and help the sales teams by primarily just giving them the signals that tell them if they're doing things in the right way or not, and allow us as leaders to really bring everyone together and get them doing it in a much more consistent way.
I love that. So that goes back to data. And here's the thing, data is not always numbers, y'all, for everyone listening. So when you think about any salesperson comes to you and tells you anything, for our sales leaders that are listening, or for salespeople that are listening, you believe something to be true about a call, go back and listen and prove it to be true, right? You always, I have to approve every day, all day long. We do something called capital, and it's very industry specific. But anyways, I have to approve this every single day. And I always have to go in and listen to the call. How was this presented? What qualifiers did we dig into before we presented this? Are we asking for the deal as we are presenting this, right? Like, how are we drawing this call forward? And so anything a salesperson tells you on your team, anything a sales manager tells you, go in and prove it through the data, which is listening to the call. Prove it for yourself,
Absolutely. And you can use AI to extract this information from the calls and pre-populate into Salesforce and score it for you. And the beauty of using the AI to do it is you get a consistent outcome every single time, and you can start comparing everything. So it's a huge game changer, and it's something we lean heavily into. And we're now at the point where all the data, all of the insights are there without the reps and the sellers having to do any manual work themselves. And we can just focus on that kind of focus, that piece around driving that consistency and getting everyone doing things in the same way.
I had to. It's so funny because I love AI. I had a interviewee ask me, what are your thoughts on AI and how it's going to possibly change the sales space? And my honest answer, because there's a lot of fear out there, right? There's a lot of fear with AI. My answer with that is I can't wait. I love technology. I think I have never experienced technology that made things worse, right? Like, you might buy the wrong tool, right? But it doesn't make things worse. It just might not be helpful. But in terms of AI, everything I've seen so far makes the world easier and a better place. And so I'm super bought in.
Absolutely, me too. Listen, at the end of the day, even in 2025, in fact, even more so in 2025, relationships and engagement still drives revenue. And so in the past, we were asking sellers to be responsible for all sorts of admin tasks that frankly they weren't very good at anyway. And now AI is able to take on those burdens and do it 10 times better than they could. So we now get consistent reportable outcomes, and we can focus our sellers on that, building those relationships. And a great story, a good example of this would be, we saw a lot of training going on kind of late 2023, early 2024 around kind of MedPick and Medic and Balance and Spice and all these different methodologies. But the skill set in learning how to use the qualification methodology is a valid skill set and a really powerful one. But it's a separate skill set to learning how to record that information in the system of record in a consistent format. And actually, it's a whole lot easier teaching salespeople the first thing than it is the second. And now we're able to use AI to solve that other problem. Now there's no other thing to focus on, but just making sure you get that green thumbs up, that you're asking the right questions, that you are coming across as that expert advisor, that subject matter expert that's helping your buyer and the person they want to speak to when they're getting close to making a better decision. So I think it's an amazing enabler, and we believe that we can use it to make every seller a top performer.
Yeah, I love that.
Very good. Well, I want to move on to culture and sales culture. I'm a huge fan of sales culture, and we've all seen very good and bad cultures. But perhaps you can talk us through the journey to great culture for sales teams and what it takes to turn those types of things around.
Oh man, yeah. So it depends. So you have to define great culture, right? So I think every organization I've ever been at defines culture a little bit differently. Again, the last two organizations I've been with, night and day in the two different cultures, right? So first you have to define what the culture is that you want. I'll tell you the type of culture I like. I like a culture that is, again, highly accountable, right? Find as much positivity as you can. Now, I don't mean the cheerleader type culture, but what I mean is seeing obstacles as opportunities and not as impediments, right? Just being able to have a positive mindset about everything we face. I mean, we're in sales. It's tough. And every month, every quarter, every year, it starts over. And so there's really no end in sight to the difficulty that sales is. And so you have to see the positive. You have to see what you're getting out of it, the growth, right? So I look for that positive, kind of growth mentality in the humans that I hire. Let's be real, Guy. When it comes to culture, the people can make or break you. So you've got to get the right. Every question you ask, coaching, you have to have the right people for coaching. For performance, for accountability, for data mindset, for culture, it's the right people. And so number one is walk through your hiring process and make sure that you're looking for exactly what you want on your team and that you know how to get that out of an interview. So that's number one. And be tough in your interviews. One of the things that I say to my team is maybes or no's. Where I find there's two things, maybes or no's, and you look for reasons to not hire, not reasons to hire, right? So a lot of people that I work with, they'll interview people and they look for reasons why they should hire them. Oh, they have this and this is great. And I'm like, yeah, but I look for, they didn't know their numbers here. They couldn't answer pipeline management questions. They didn't ask me great questions at the end, right? I look for curiosity. There's different things that I look for. So hire the right people, get the right people in seat. That's number one. Number two is be relentlessly clear about what you expect from your organization, from your team, from yourself. Everything I have and everything that I expect is in writing. So every quarter, I give my leaders a sheet of paper that says expectations, and from their numbers to pipeline to how they're running their meetings, everything is written down. Now, when you hear that, people go, oh, that sounds like micromanagement, but it's not. If you, have you read First Break All the Rules?
No, but I'm going to. I'm making lots of notes while you're talking.
First Break All the Rules. They did research over 500 organizations around what makes employees stick and what makes employees perform high and what makes them happy. One of the questions, and it came down to, I think, 12 questions, right? And one of the questions in there is, do I know what's expected of me? So my last organization, my team, where I push people, we're highly accountable. We're going to hit our number no matter what. I refuse to fail, right? And I expect that of all my humans. You would think that when we got our employee surveys that I would score poorly because of that high pressure, high accountability. But when you pair high pressure, high accountability with the right people, with clear expectations and with coaching, it's a recipe for magic, right? Our team scored 20 points higher than the rest of the entire organization in terms of employee satisfaction. The question was, how is your team so happy? You fired people, you have high expectations, you're not the easiest person to work for, whatever it is. And it's like, well, but they know what's expected of them. We're on the same boat with them. We're coaching, we're pushing, we're holding ourselves to the same standard. It's not us pointing and saying, go get this done. We're all in it together. And I think when you create that culture, there's a lot of buy-in, right? And so it's to recap, because I know I rambled there for a second, it's set really clear expectations, hire the right people, hold yourself to the same standard that you hold your team, and don't just expect to get, also you have to give that coaching, that support, etc. And if you do those things, not only will you have a high-performing team, you'll have a satisfied and a happy high-performing team.
I think that's so valuable. Really appreciate that feedback. We went through some challenging times about a year ago, and it reminds me, I was so scared to talk to the team about what was going on and what effort and energy we were going to need to achieve the goals for the year. And we kind of brought everyone together. And what was amazing is how everyone responded. Because historically, I'm always the guy, talking everything up, and everything's great, it's all fantastic, and all of a sudden I was being very real with everybody about the challenge or the problem we were particularly facing, and the camaraderie and the willingness to kind of come together and work as a unit. And suddenly, there wasn't a cigarette paper between us. You could see everyone was working as a gel function, one unit working towards a common goal. And what's amazing is how the team's kind of moved forward from there. We've become kind of supercharged and actually talking to people as adults instead of just rah-rahing all the time has such a powerful effect to the right people. I think is right, exactly as your point. So let me ask you then: are there any particular challenges that come to mind when you're faced in trying to transform a team's culture? So you get brought in and you've got big personalities that maybe are billing well but are causing challenges around that culture piece. How have you tackled some of those challenges before?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the case, right? Especially, so again, I consider myself like the Mary Poppins of sales leadership, in that I go in, turn the team around, get everything performing. So it usually stay with an organization for about 3 years, right? But when I first go in, everybody likes me in the first 30 days because I'm just listening and asking questions, right? But then I tend to try to get people off the team quickly, right? Anybody that I think is not going to be a good fit, what have you. I think where people mess up with that, Guy, is leaders will accept excuses if they can relate to them. Leaders will accept negativity if they can relate to it. The problem is when you have those naysayers and those humans that just fight the system, that's a long-term problem. So you have to make those decisions quickly and get them off your team. And it's unfortunate because you don't want to be the person that goes in and cleans house, but they can make or break you, and they just make the path so much longer. So I'm sure if I were to say, you're going to think of somebody, if I were to say, I want you to think in your head of somebody that was in the organization, in your organization. Maybe they'd been there for a while. They had the tribal knowledge. There was value that they brought, but they made things difficult. They didn't play well with others. There was something, right? And everybody just oh, that's just Joe, right? That's just Joe. That's just Joe. But he's really great at X, Y, and Z. Then someday Joe finally leaves and you're like, wow, it is so much easier to get things done. It's so much better without Joe here. He should have left a long time ago, right? And so we make excuses. I know you were thinking of somebody. We make excuses for people and we explain away the behaviors. And we just have to think, here's the thing. I think of it in a very positive way. It's not, oh, we're going to fire Joe. It's, hey, Joe would be much happier someplace else. He's also hanging on. He's hanging on because he doesn't want to be here anymore. He's done. It's time for Joe to go and be happy someplace else, and us to put somebody in the spot that's happy to be here, right? And so when you face those challenges, you have to make those difficult decisions, but that's why we're in the spot that we're in. That's our job. Our job isn't culture and coaching and all of that. It is, but it's also making really tough decisions and making sure our team is right.
It's such an interesting story because we hear it all the time. I host CEO dinners every month and done in different countries and all over the place and CEOs at different stages. But consistently, when we talk about the challenges they're facing, everyone can always relate to, well, I've got this person, they're very senior, they've been with us a long time, they've got a lot of knowledge, but they're just not fitting right now, and I'm not quite sure what to do with it. And you almost hear this kind of unison voice come back at them with all the other CEOs going, just get rid of them. It won't be as bad as you think. Before you know it, you'll get through it, and you'll actually wish you'd done it a whole lot sooner. So we hear that all the time, but it's very real when you're in the moment. But actually, and almost bringing someone else in to kind of help you make that decision sometimes helps as well. But don't let it continue. Don't let it fester, because the sooner it's gone, the sooner you can move forward.
Here's a trick: the maybes or no's thing works for your team as well. So sit down and you audit your team. You put everyone that reports to you and that's underneath you on a list, and you look at them. And you say, would I rehire this person right now? Would I rehire this person for this role? Does this person check all the boxes? Am I excited that this person's on my team? If you can't say yes to everyone and you kind of like hesitate with anyone, that person probably shouldn't be on your team. And here's the thing, like, it's not the end of the world for anyone. They will go and they will find the right fit. And so I think that's the biggest hurdle I see leaders face, is saying, oh, I feel so bad. And I'm like, for what? For what? This isn't the right role for them. They're going to be happier doing something that fits them better. You know what I mean?
We build up this whole narrative in our heads as leaders that we have this ultimate responsibility and so on. But actually, exactly as you rightly said, ultimately we have a responsibility to the whole organization. And if we allow someone to stay that slows everybody down, you're letting a whole group of people down, not just one. So I absolutely buy into that. And I've never heard a story where after the event, it was the wrong decision. That's usually a good sign, right? Well, listen, Shianne, thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to reach out to me or Shianne on LinkedIn, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you move forward.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Insights from Ebsta. If you want to learn more from some of the brightest minds on how to predictably and efficiently grow revenue, then subscribe to our newsletter. We'll deliver actionable insights straight to your inbox. Go to ebsta.com/newsletter. See you soon.